Welcome to Job Ready. I'm Jeff Nelder. This is my co-host, Charlie Nguyen, and we have a fabulous guest for you today. Welcome, Paul Fain.
Thanks for having me, Jeff and Charlie. Good to see you.
Man, we're so glad to have you. To the audience, uh, Paul's journalistic career has been everywhere, in my opinion, that people who are in workforce development and higher ed need to read or watch or listen. Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, and now WorkShift. Two of the really important podcasts on workforce development as well. So, Paul, really excited to get in this conversation today. And you and I met because you had written something about, or I had read something you wrote about uh, the public sector and the really stark stats of the type of transformation that's required versus the investment that's currently being made. Can you ground the audience in that? And let's jump into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, good question. Look, relative to other wealthy countries across the OECD, United States invests among the lowest amount per capita in workforce development. I think it's about 0.1% of our annual budget. For apprenticeship, which everybody claims to love, the Fed spend $285 million, which is, obviously a pittance, a drop in the bucket. That said, I think there are folks who have questions, some of them well grounded in the efficiency of our workforce training systems and who are, as a result, less than enthusiastic about investing more. But you're not really seeing enough, I think, from the private sector as well. Certainly in some of these emerging, up and coming, underutilized on-ramps to careers relative to traditional higher education or other pathways. So I think something probably needs to give if we want to do what Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, says to train a new generation for the jobs of tomorrow.
So the public sector isn't going to just throw out a life raft and save everybody, and the private sector. Charlie and I have always looked to the private sector for innovation, for commitment to the workforce. But, we've seen, a lot of CEOs making the hard decision and laying off, significant parts of their workforce, despite making profits, and then taking an AI first approach. What's going to happen if the public sector isn't investing enough and the private sector sees advantage in culling their workforce? I mean, who's going to be left to buy products?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think from a corporate standpoint, you can't neglect society on the whole. I mean, we've seen, just this last week, as somebody who, and I'm certainly not an expert, but I spend a lot of time looking at data and talking to actual experts. I was still shocked to see some of the numbers about holiday spending and how, the top 10% of earners in this country are like more than half of the spending. And it's rippling across the economy in fascinating and frankly troubling ways where luxury brands are doing well, budget brands are not in retail coming into the holidays here. So that, if you're in the business, particularly a large business of having customers who aren't just rich, this is a problem you need to care about.
It's funny that you say that, Paul, because Walmart last quarterly earning call, they actually exceeded expectation, and they said that the tale of two categories of shopper at Walmart now, where the reason why Walmart continued to grow and revenue, observing revenue growth is because they're now seeing more affluent shoppers at Walmart, compensating for the core or traditional category of shopper there. So that's to your point. Paul, I want to go back to the point, and maybe if you've done a little bit of work on this, but the CEO of Ford said a new types or a new class of jobs. I mean, what are they?
Yeah, well, I think in my job, I try very hard to get a handle on what's happening right now. And frankly, that is virtually impossible alone. Predicting what's going to happen in 5 years, even harder. But to Jim Farley, who I think has been a real leader on this, he's been out there talking about this a lot. He got a lot of attention for saying that Ford dealerships have 5,000 opened auto technician jobs that pay an average of $120K a year. And they just can't hire these people. They can't find them. And, you know, part of it too is like, the auto technician job is not what it was when I was growing up, when it was, you know, like analog, oil and metal parts, not computers. As the president famously said, it's all computers now. So the jobs themselves already now are probably different than certainly what a lot of young people who are trying to explore their career options probably think. This is something I hear a lot. Like, I'm in Ohio, and manufacturing has a pretty bad rap here. I mean, all of us who grew up in Ohio saw so many jobs disappear, companies leave. So, you know, you have young people who are looking at growing manufacturing options in this state, saying, you know what, my grandfather got laid off from Ford, ironically, you know, a generation or two ago. And that's not a safe, stable job, and it's a dirty job. Not necessarily true. You know, Anduril, this fascinating upstart defense contractor, is going to be hiring 4,000 people at a factory here in Greater Columbus at an $128K a pop. Jobs are changing now, and it's a very safe bet that technology will drive their further transformation probably faster than we've ever seen before in the next few years.
Paul, you know, we talked with a CTO a couple weeks back, and he said, and he's definitely a human-centered CTO. He's looking for ways to bring people into the picture, not disintermediate them. And he said, look, he said, I needed to fill 10 roles. I got about 1,500 applications. I narrowed it down to the best handful. None of them were real, right? It was like, and you know, everybody's talking about how it's incredibly dispiriting and demoralizing to send your resume into this black hole. When Ford announces the jobs, when the contractors announce the jobs, is part of the problem the AI resume tsunami? Do people know how to actually get to those jobs? Is that what's happening with that?
Yeah, by all accounts, while AI promises a lot, and I mean that sincerely, I'm not being sarcastic, in the job search domain, you know, matching your skills across jobs you never knew existed. I mean, there's a lot of potential there that's already become, you know, beginning to be realized. The arms race of AI on both ends of the job search is, I think, close to a disaster level. I think you could say that, at least if you're a young person, early career person looking for a job. I cannot imagine how frustrating. Frankly, HR too. Like it is literally, I think arms race is the right term for that. And yeah, I think it distorts the way people view opportunity in this country. I mean, I've heard this too. Like I've, you know, professional colleagues and friends who've sent out hundreds of resumes and got nothing, who have good experience. Part of this too, by the way. So, you know, yes, the kind of AI behind the pitch problem is very real, but also we have a pretty stagnant hiring market right now. You know, there's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal today by Greg Ip saying, you know, all of the corporate leaders he's talking to are bullish, excited about growth, and extremely negative about hiring, particularly in their own companies. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Tariffs are part of that. Some people think AI might be part of that. But whatever the case is, particularly for 21 to 25-year-olds, there's been a 13% relative decline in enrollment over the last 3 years. And that's a lot of people.
I think it's easy, you know, it's easy to at times to say that companies are just profit driven and they are leveraging or adopting or encouraging the adoptions of AI to increase the margin. And I think that's kind of a catch-all in some way. I want to dive a little bit into with both of you because I think at the end of the day, yes, company has been that way. Profit margin driven, especially public one. Every quarter, you're being asked, what are you doing to drive growth? What are you doing to increase the margin? So to me, that's not new. What's really interesting, and I'm guilty of this by necessity, but also by the fact that it's so much better solution. Because let me walk you through what I mean by that. Previously, if you hire somebody out of college, as a manager, you would have to spend a lot of time and effort to get that individual onboarded, to get to the level of productivity. Statistic has shown that over 50% of them would fall off the wagon within the first, year or two. So there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of pain associated with taking a chance on an unproven talent, right?
Yes.
I'll use my own example today. And AI has been nothing short of 10x or if not 100x. I love to put it just to emphasize the fact that it's so transformative to our day, right? Because I'm able to get so much more work done. I have several AIs that's working for me, and I feel like I am incredibly empowered as a result of that. So in some way, I feel like that is a phenomenon across the board where a lot of managers typically who would fight for an increased budget, who would fight to hire more people, to hire and all that stuff, are now saying that, gosh, I'm able to get a lot more work done. I love for you to challenge because I love to pin it on the big evil for-profit corporate, companies and all this stuff. But the reality is maybe we're a victim of our own innovation.
Yeah, no, it's a really well described phenomena here. I mean, I think there's a couple central buckets to look at here. There's the productivity gains that can augment a worker, that can bring someone's contributions on the job up to a higher level of expertise by the use of AI as a tool, as an aid that they wouldn't have had for a longer period of time in the past. That's good for everybody, I think, right? Like, I think the worker can and should benefit from that, and certainly the company. The question is it preventing hiring in that first rung of employment? And I don't think that the data from my reporting, and I have to say, by the way, I'm not an advocate. I'm a follow the money journalist who's just trying to kind of play it straight here. So no vested interest in this. And the things that I personally think should not be of interest to you because they're not interesting. But channeling actual experts. And frankly, there's not a lot of them. There's a lot of opinions on AI, a lot of emotional responses, but relatively few actual experts who have access to real corporate data about hiring patterns. And most of them, ironically, at least given kind of where we are in our discourse right now, are at elite higher ed institutions, our best kind of universities. But yeah, are we not hiring people at that first rung? I don't know. But I think anecdotally, yeah, that's starting to happen. Like, one of the areas that we've seen anecdotally in this country is that entry level financial analyst, people getting jobs on Wall Street, right? And by the way, these aren't necessarily the people in America who we should be the most concerned about. Like, you have to go to a very highly prestigious school typically to get into one of those places. You have an MBA from one of those schools, maybe even. But typically those folks, you start by writing reports. That's how you kind of learn. That's how you start contributing. That's not necessary anymore. That can be done entirely by AI with a little bit of kind of quality control from someone who has some expertise. And I think we've seen quite a bit of evidence that those jobs are gone. So what happens on the second tier, right? Like, as a corporate leader, and I would assume companies are very aware of this, you can't not have any entry level people. Eventually that's going to be a problem because you need them to get to the middle and top kind of tier of contribution. So I don't know if people have answers to that. I would love it if some of your listeners have seen companies that are kind of threading that needle.
Paul, you talk with leadership at major corporations. The difference, one of the key differences in my mind on this topic is that you're at a large corporation, you have an economist on the payroll. You have people who are tracking and following macro trends and planning for the long term, trying to help you see around the corner, right? The point that you brought up just now about succession planning and, the strength of your bench, that has to be something that these, well-paid, heard and, listened to economists or analysts are saying to their leadership, right? Like, we don't have a bench if we don't hire early career. I mean, like, what are people saying about that inside these large corporations? Have you heard anything?
Not firsthand, to be honest with you. Like, I think in my reporting, we do a lot better with the very big companies than the smaller ones, which is a weakness, frankly. Like, the 100-person company, I don't have as good of a handle on. Rely on aggregators across like industry associations for that. But yeah, like, thinking about what Amazon has said, or Verizon, or some of these big companies that have done restructuring, let's put it that way, that appears to, or at least they've said in some cases, has something to do with AI. Have to give a caveat there. There are a lot of folks who believe, I think with some good reason, that companies like to blame AI for restructuring that might not be really about AI. But I think let's take Amazon, like obviously a big company that's all in on AI and has started to move its workforce around a lot. They have said that they're reskilling folks, that they're trying to move people into lateral jobs. I think big companies are doing that, right? Like I think I would be shocked if any large corporation wasn't aware of the need to have a strong bench development. And certainly, thinking about the career path work that a lot of these companies do, giving workers, Charlie, to your point, the churn of workers is a huge problem. Retention in so many industries is lower than people even think. We're talking months sometimes, not years. But to give people access to education and training so that they can advance, and in for the companies so that they can identify folks who want to advance, like showing that career path up from what might be, kind of dead end entry level frontline work job. Certainly companies have invested a lot more in that in recent years. And, maybe not enough, but I think the trend is heading in the right direction.
Are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater in this case? Paul is
What do you
to
mean,
your
Charlie?
point. I mean, was that?
I want to know who the baby is in this
Well, the
analogy.
baby in this scenario is early talent, the people that's first rung. Because if you think about it, um, the you need to continue to have that pipeline of talent. So the answer is typically, people are always looking for an either or. But to me, the likely answer is N or all of the above. More likely, yes, you need to increase productivity of the current workforce. But you also need to figure out how to build a pipeline so that the people that you're hiring today will be able to create more, not just come in and run and give you the productivity, but also that innovation that they can bring with it, the fresh perspective, so many intangible values that oftentimes we don't appreciate until we don't have it anymore, right? And so right now we're seeing that's the case, and I wonder what has to happen in your opinion, Paul, for us to start to realize that, hey, yes, we're not going to get the productivity from the first run of talent, the early career talent, but that is an investment that we must make.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff here that somebody who is my age is not going to be the best at understanding the marketplace as for customers, right? Like it's not just having talent for some point down the road. Like you need younger people to understand the most desirable consumers, which are young people across many, many professions. Also, young people are better with tech. Let's just be straight up on that. Like I'm going to trust somebody under 30 for how to apply AI way more than a 51-year-old like myself, just being straight there too. But look, I think this is a problem that's been a problem for a long time in this country. And this is where I agree with the Ford CEO. Like we don't invest enough in preparing young people or exposing them to what's possible in careers in this country for forever, for many years, at least going back to the GI Bill, right? Which was transformative, frankly, to the middle class and the economy. That means the federal financial aid for college hasn't kept pace with inflation for a long time. The Pell Grants, which subsidize the education of lower income folks, they're not enough right now. No, I don't think anyone could contest that. We don't even, a lot of the vocational jobs, the career education, the skilled trades that we're seeing a big bump in interest, by the way. I had a major community college president tell me they have huge wait lists for the skilled trades programs right now, particularly among folks right out of high school. And when they survey them, part of it's that they're worried about technology eliminating knowledge economy jobs, which is happening, by the way, in a lot of spaces. In Columbus, Ohio, there's been a decline in knowledge economy jobs as there's been a rise in the demand for manufacturing, et cetera. But in those places, those spaces, we tend to have people finance their own education. The Pew folks did some research, and this is horrifying. Like the vast majority of those vocational training programs, lower income people tend to be the primary customers there. They pay out of pocket. They take on credit card debt. It looks like for a large majority of that. Look, it's worked well enough for this country for a long time. Doesn't work that well if you're a lower income person. And we can talk about some of the data there of folks who don't make it through training, are underemployed, unemployed. Our labor force participation rate the percentage of American adults who are working or looking for a job is about 63%. In some states, it's 56. That's not good enough. Like, you can't pay the bills. You can't have, a lot of aging boomers having social services if 56% of people are working. And across the partisan divide in this country, any reality-based politician is taking that a lot more seriously now, because it's a societal problem that goes a lot deeper than just opportunity for young people.
Paul, you mentioned reality-based politicians, and I think that's a kind of an area of hope. And I'd love to change it up. The problem is well defined. Some of the stats, about retention that you mentioned as a matter of months, I want to dig into that with you offline, because I hadn't seen that stat at all, especially right now. But we talked with a fellow named H.D. Chambers in Texas, who started out a career path program in high school, and they've had a great deal of success with that. And we found out about it from Texas Medical Center, talking about some of their big feeder sources, right? So there are people who are doing this well, who are navigating this. There are reality-based politicians. There are CEOs who really are taking a long-term view and realize that we need to prop up the humankind in order to have a system working. So, what are the bright points? What are some of the things that you're seeing that are really interesting?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because sometimes I can neglect the bright spots, and there are a lot, honestly. Like, I think we as a society, folks who work on this challenge, and they come from a lot of different directions. It's educators from K-12 up through corporate upskilling. It's folks in workforce, and it's government. We know the models that work. And, I'm not sure that we could have said that as well. Like, at least as in my journalism, I think there was less sophistication and confusion about solutions pre-pandemic than what there is now. And that's driven by urgency, as you say, like healthcare, number one. I mean, the healthcare industry is getting more creative because they need to, because they have huge skill shortages, skills gaps. Advanced manufacturing, as I said, and then IT generally, cyber. Those are the three areas where you see the most innovation. And what we know works is exposing kids to career possibilities in middle school. If you've gone into middle school and you haven't started that, it's too late. And there's a lot of research to back that up, because people are smart, right? Like, they need to know what's possible to motivate, to push forward. And to give you a specific example of something that gives me hope, a lot of times, frankly, we live in a billionaire-driven society right now. So philanthropy is a big part of the most exciting things I've seen that kind of stirred up money from a foundation to de-risk something. Michael Bloomberg's philanthropies, $250 million gift a couple years ago to create 10 healthcare high schools around the country affiliated with big healthcare systems that are, all of them have committed to funding these, going beyond Bloomberg's gift. This isn't tracking people into a career that they can't get out of or something. This is preparing young people who want to attend these high schools to be a certified, healthcare worker when they graduate high school with a path up. And if they want to go to college and get a BA, you can do that too. There's more of that I'm seeing across this country that I think, bipartisan in California as well as Alabama, a real hunger to do that sort of work.
What about the skills first movement? You wrote something that got published today, right, on WorkShift, about the Pell Grants and the lack of data in skills first. Now, when we talk with Jobs for the Future, U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, they're investing a lot. I mean, a lot of mind power, brand power, influence into skills first. But is it nascent still? Is it like, where is that being done well?
Yeah. As you all have seen this, governors, again, across the political divide, at this point, I don't even know how many states. I think it's like 30. In state government said we should not require a 4-year degree or a college degree at all for jobs that don't require one. That movement, that campaign has gone across a lot of corporate America and the public sector as well. And Opportunity at Work is a nonprofit that has done a great job in promoting that. They call folks who are skilled through alternative routes stars, people who have skills, who can do jobs if they just get that door open, that door cracked without, as they say, the paper ceiling, like requiring a degree that in some cases might just be a piece of paper. Not always. I very much believe in the value of a college degree. If you can get one that has value in the market without taking on a lot of debt, that's a lot of caveats there. But yeah, to your point of like, why, if this is so popular, and it is, like, this is one of the only things that the Biden administration and the Trump administration agreed on. You know, when Trump got in the second time, he said that they dropped it across the federal government, degree requirements. Biden already did it, but you know, whatever. They agree on this. Why isn't it happening more? It's, I forget which one of you said this, but HR doesn't like to take a chance on things. You know, like this, the nature of HR, you know, you want to rely on something that's a proven bet generally. That's, you know, local university, generally where you go. Like the enthusiasm at the C-suite level has not probably translated across the whole workforce yet. But I'm still optimistic. It's still early days. You know, we like to like say something's going to happen in this country. It's going to be wonderful. If it doesn't happen right away, it's a total failure. I think that's where we are with skills first and some of the discourse, but I wouldn't sleep on it. I think it's a building movement.
Do you know why HR is not taking the lead on that, Paul?
Not really, other than convincingly from folks in that space and things I've read. Generally you're not rewarded for taking the risk. Like the incentives probably aren't there. I mean, those
That's
are hard
exactly it.
jobs. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
you're absolutely spot on, right? Because I think when people think about HR, when it's a compliance issue, that's HR. When there is employee relation issues, that's HR, right? And so you don't, the aspect of human talent and human development is relatively sort of unknown in a corporate construct because we all been a part of larger corporations, and so that's why inertia is so incredibly powerful, because there's no incentive to get out of that inertia, right? Hey, I want to shift gear a little bit, and you guys talk about skill first, and we're seeing more and more employers indeed saying that skills matter, but you still need a way to certify the skills, right? Because otherwise, I, as whoever, can claim to have 157 skills, and check up all the boxes. Now, on the other side of it, are we experiencing a true disruption to higher ed?
Yeah, good question. I think your point about how to signal the skills in a verifiable, trusted way to the employer, definitely a challenge. The assessment space is one that is tricky for a lot of reasons, including legal ones. But ETS, the testing nonprofit, the College Board, they're in this space. They're trying to do better matching between education, work skills, and the job market. There's a lot of work in this space. Federal government, the states are doing this. The talent marketplaces is one term you hear a lot. Digital wallets for people to have their skills displayed. So there's a lot of work on this. It's hard. You need a common language is one thing. You can't have the Tower of Babel problem where, a skill is defined one way in one state or in one company and another in another. So tough problem. I will say, by the way, AI convincingly described by almost everyone as a big part of the solution. Like so much more is possible now in skills matching that wasn't before machine learning and AI. But yeah, for higher ed, it's been a rough stretch. Like overall enrollment in American higher education has slid for many years now, going back to the Great Recession. We have fewer young people going back to the Great Recession. They call this the kind of demographic or enrollment cliff, where there are fewer people coming out of high school beginning now this year. So higher ed's kind of customer problem is about to get worse. They're also under attack. This administration is no fan of traditional college, has come after them in a big way. You've seen public trust and belief in the value of higher ed has eroded. And that's not just a partisan issue. I think people have been screaming about student debt levels as well. probably should. For a lot of folks, student debt isn't sustainable. For some, it is a good investment, I will caution. But yeah, it's not a surprise that Americans are like, hey, this looks like a riskier investment than ever before, right at the time that higher ed's kind of foundations have been rocked. And I'm worried about it, to be honest, because I think, the wealthy elite institutions we all talk about all the time, the ones that Trump's attacking, Harvard, I'll bet all your listeners, like literally, that Harvard is going to be fantastic long after I'm dead. But it's the regional public universities, the community colleges, the small private colleges in rural areas. Yeah, some real tough sledding to go.
But let's be honest here, right? I mean, I'm a huge higher ed fan. I believe wholeheartedly in a degree. In formal education, not just the credential, but because I do think that young adults going through the 4 year, whatever it is, learn a ton. You learn to learn. You build some of the longest lasting relationship that will be incredibly helpful later in your career as well, right? And it's really shape who you are. But the reality of it is higher ed has structural issues. And so when we talk about the current administration is not being a fan, when we talk about student debt issue, when we talk about lack of job readiness, it's higher ed must reinvent itself. I mean, there's no shortage of that because when we talk to a R1 public institution, and it would take over a year just to update the curriculum. And they're considered pretty innovative because without naming names, Paul, I would tell you that we've dealt with institutions where their cybersecurity curriculum was written 20 plus years ago, and they're still being taught today in the classroom, right? And so when you think about how fast AI is moving and you're seeing this, I can't help but thinking that higher ed has invited this disruption or maybe due for one. And in order for it to come out of the ashes and maybe I'm just doing the kind of University of Phoenix commercial here, Jeff, but come out of the ashes and rise again.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not trying to duck your point. It's well-founded, but generalizing about 4,000 institutions in America is, everything is local in America. Everything, even generalizing about one university is probably not fair because there's so many programs, right? But to your general point, yes, I think it's safe to say that higher education has been not aligned well enough with the labor market writ large. So Arizona State University, oh my gosh, like that, I would not say that about Arizona State University. It's fantastic. Like it is like literally across the board. Like for many years, I've been looking at its model to see where are their weaknesses. That's my job. Where can I deflate the balloon? I can't deflate the balloon. It's better. Its numbers are better than I think. It literally admits everyone. Like when the Supreme Court came out with its affirmative action decision, the president, Michael Crow of Arizona State, said, not a problem for us because we already admit everyone, right? So there are many bright spots. But the Georgetown Center on Education and Work, they had this study recently about the middle skills jobs, ones that don't require a 4-year degree, certificate, associate degree, paramedics, construction managers, gas plant operators. Current supply is only 13% of demand right now of those credentials in this country. We don't have enough of those programs. And the incentives, frankly, aren't there. Governors like to talk a good game about creating job-aligned training programs, but they don't usually pay for them. So again, the students have to take on the debt to get those certificates. And might actually just quick other side point. It turns out, and this is pretty basic when you think about it, but in higher education, creating a program for a high demand field, take cyber. It's super hard because it's high demand. Your instructors are going to make a lot more in the private sector. Oftentimes the tools for high demand fields that you need for hands-on learning, they're expensive too. So it's not fair to put it all on higher ed. But I will say this, like we used to joke around about this at Inside Higher Ed. When a college president would visit, and many of them did a week, it was always a hard question for them to answer. What have you cut? I'm a journalism guy. Journalism programs in this country, a lot of them have gone away, but probably more of them should go away because there aren't many jobs in that field. It's a very additive industry and it's hard to cut back and to retool around a changing job.
Do you?
Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie.
No. Paul, I'd love to get your kind of crystal ball out for a second. Right? Because we believe that AI will create new jobs. We believe that. I mean, I believe that. but most of us, at least the one that I know, have not really seen the net new job, creation as a result of that. Is there early signals that we should be looking at as a way to kind of give us hope? Because I gotta believe, I mean, the industrial revolution have brought many new jobs that previously weren't available in the previous economy. And then we've seen the .com, and other technology that come about in the last 30, 40 years have created net new jobs. But I'm having a hard time seeing new job being created by AI beyond data center, and a few other things. And I'm saying it's purely, I mean, truly just trying to figure out what some of the early signals that we can point to and say, we don't know about the future yet, but here's what we know. Here are some of the clear early signals that this thing is going to be a net gain for our society.
Yeah, I love that question, and I wish I had an answer for it. Yeah, because I don't. I was actually listening to the All In podcast today on this very issue. The folks on that show said, and I agree with this fully, the AI labs and the AI industry hasn't done a good enough job of signaling the benefits to real people. Like, we've heard a ton about AGI and the kind of science fiction level benefits of AI. But like, for the average person, what's this going to do to your life, your job? Not enough on that. There's a wide consensus of that, including from Silicon Valley, that they just haven't done a good enough job of making tangible this. And, part of that is because it's hard, like augmenting jobs in medical sciences, like imaging, comparing images to get faster diagnoses. We've seen some of that, but like, what does this mean for actual people's jobs? I think that's going to have to come, frankly, from some of the companies that have data. And I think you're going to start seeing more of it, to be honest. Anthropic, the creator of Claude, they do a lot of this on kind of productivity, publicly available productivity data on who's using it how, that you can extrapolate to see some of these benefits. OpenAI is doing it. Google's going to be doing more of it, I'm sure. So, but yeah, as of now, the ledger has been very much more on the fear side.
What's
Fear
really
about
interesting, Anthropic CEO is actually pretty bearish, right? I mean, you heard him talk about, the impact to jobs and things like that. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I saw him speak in DC recently, and everybody saw his thing of like, 3 to 5 years, massive job elimination. And he's very convincing. Him and Jack Clark, his co-founder, like, we wish we didn't have to say this, but we believe it, and please take us at face value. So, I would take that seriously. Of course, there's vested interest, right? Like, our technology is so amazing. It's going to change the whole world. It's like, you need to hear from people other than the AI labs on this. But in the same breath, I think I've heard him say, Dario Madai, that this is going to open up all sorts of new productivity gains for workers. This is going to allow them to skip so much scut work. Here's a great one. I think most people have seen or thought about this. Teachers, a group that has to deal with AI more than most of us already. I think there was a lot of apprehension and fear initially, certainly in higher ed that I heard. Cheating. Everybody was so freaked out about cheating, which, to be honest, like, that's kind of missing the forest for the trees. Like, there's bigger fish to fry on this. But I think that the worm has turned. I think a lot of teachers and professors are like, wow, this is an incredible tool for helping students get extra attention, for grading, things that you can drop, creating quizzes. Like, there are ways to harness this to make your job better, to do a better job with students. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish here. That's a real thing. That doesn't mean the downsides aren't real too, but we just haven't heard as much of those stories. And I don't quite know why that is. Maybe it's more people kind of move more to anxiety before they can feel the benefits of something.
Paul, sorry, Jeff. I want to continue this path because I think it's very interesting. I think what you said is true all around. Yes, we're seeing more productivity, more effectiveness, more efficiency on, using the teacher as an example, right? Because they're able to leverage AI to do a lot of manual work that previously grading papers, all that stuff, and then spend more time with the students. I get the upside and I love that. And I am the first, I experienced that benefit firsthand myself in a number of ways. But to your point about the AI labs, but what is the net job gain as a result of that? Because there's, in the higher ed setting, there's less of a need for TA, potentially. There's
Yeah,
less
for
of a
sure.
need for even faculty or professor as a result. Yes, you're seeing the existing function, you're seeing much more productivity as a result of it. And I think Jensen Huang on an interview the Joe Rogan show, and he talked about the radiologists, right, where they were concerned that if AI comes out, that position, that job will go away. And the reality is actually that job is growing because a lot of the radiologists are able to cut down the manual low value task or aspect of the job and focus more on diagnosing the disease and make themselves more valuable as a result of it. So, but that's also the example that you just mentioned just now about the teacher. But the task, many of our jobs today are squarely doing specific tasks, and those positions will be impacted by AI. Taxi driver, delivery driver, truck driver, you name it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up medical imaging. 2 years ago now, which is an eternity in AI, a friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon hooked me up with a pretty famous neuroscientist who told me he already had been surpassed by the LLMs and analyzing medical images. And this is like one of the world's top people at this. Yeah, absolutely. Bring it down the kind of corporate pecking order a bit. I'm sorry, the occupational pecking order. One profession because people told me it was a good one to look at, not because I'm smart, but that I've been looking at is medical billing and coding. These are good jobs that pay $60K. You can get them usually with a 1-year certificate from a community college. There's not enough people doing this still. It's a good hiring market. Like people want to hire more medical biller and coders still today. But at some point, I think it's safe to say that profession is going to take a huge hit. We heard companies don't want to talk about this, but Rand did a study. A major healthcare system not identified had already eliminated all humans in its medical billing and coding for outpatients. So it's already happening. But, you think about what you said, making the jobs better. We have agency in that. We, meaning governments, companies, we can help ensure that instead of eliminating people, that you're empowering people on the other side of this. We can control a lot of that. But I think while it's safe to say, at least today, I think that the data to show that the large scale disruption hasn't happened yet in a way that the data isn't there to prove it. Most people think there is going to be some level of substantial disruption soon. I think a lot of people are optimistic that on the other side of it, we're going to be in a better place, hopefully, as a society. But what happens in the middle there for people who are displaced in terms of their retraining, making sure that the jobs aren't eliminated willy-nilly? There's a lot of work for all of us in the next stretch.
Mic drop moment. Paul, thanks a lot for coming on today. We sure are excited to have had you here.
Great questions. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Gosh, I can go another few hours with you, Paul, because I
Yeah.
think this is a very, very relevant and urgent. In my view, I'm not really on the camp of anti-AI. I am cautiously optimistic about the promise of AI. I've seen the benefit that it can do for my business, for my personal learning. But I'm also trying to figure out where are some of the, early signals that the AI will usher in a new era of job abundance, and job creations, and gonna take a lot of people out of poverty and elevate and so on and so forth. So I'm hoping that we'll have more data on that shortly.
Definitely something we need in this society and this is coming from a lot of people who know a lot more than I do, but we need better information about the labor market and what's happening to real people. We don't have very good data in this country. The first step to kind of knowing how to deal with this is knowing what's actually happening. And we're flying pretty blind right now, to be honest.
Well, thanks for joining us, Paul. We really appreciate you coming on to the Job Ready podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Hope we can have you back.
Yeah. I agree with you both. I think this is an urgent issue. So glad you're doing it.